Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. So we have had a good few months since Season of Mastery has kicked off and the players have had the time to experience leveling and gradually getting onto endgame. So is Season of Mastery doing any better or any worse than Classic was for around this point in time in terms of real money trading, gold farming and botting? Well, yes, it's overall being the key word, doing better. Very controversial thing to say because you better believe that they still exist. In fact, we've a fair amount of footage to look over here, but many of the changes that Blizzard made prior to the season launching have impacted them to a large degree. And there will always be some degree of automation going on whatever they do. That's simply the case with every single online game I've ever seen. Not to excuse poor management of the game or them existing, but oh man, it was not just worse in Classic, it was way worse than this, and players felt the effect of it to a much greater degree as well. In fact, just for the sake of comparison, I went back to look at some of the old videos that I recorded early on in Classic when bots were starting to really ramp up, and the difference is frankly huge. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is with Classic, botters had the entire duration of the game to get everything working on their end as well as possible, so when Season of Mastery rolled around, they already had all that tech in place, so they should have been able to just fire it off. Even still, it has been mitigated quite a bit, which is good to see. At this point in time, during Classic, you would have been lucky to see a Black Lotus for under 200 gold. In Season of Mastery, for me at least, they're around 50 gold. I don't imagine that price is going to fluctuate too much across the big servers, with more spawns of the top herbs in high level zones on top of Black Lotus dropping from them as the herbing system works in TBC, and Black Lotus can actually drop from Black Lotus themselves. This has caused the price to come down massively, both in and out of game. In April 2020, 10 Black Lotus would have set you back over $100. Nowadays, it's much less than that, or so I've heard. You know what else we have going for us at the moment? Well, at the moment at least, no transfers. In terms of battling, gold, selling and buying, not having the ability to quickly hop between low population and high population is extremely beneficial. Players back in Classic would load upon materials or just herb endlessly on low population servers via automation, pay out the $25 transfer fee to a bigger server with a bigger market, and then offload via real money trading or through the auction house. Again, looking back to April 2020, organized farmers used to plant, quite literally, level 1 warrior scouts on Lotus spawn locations on the low population servers, so that as soon as one of them ever popped up, they could have a herber run over there in absolutely no time at all. And Blizzard did actually address this during Classic, making it so you needed the herbalism level to see them whilst being dead, but instead people just started to level hunters, spamming their eagle eye macros on each spawn to work out their locations instead, so it was only really a very short-term fix. On top of that, we had multi-boxes of 1 druid, 1 priest, 3 mages. Who remembers those who were sitting in Strat Undead all day, every day, to the point where righteous orbs were getting towards vendor price. This was also similar in Sunken Temple, where they were just chain farming the place for leatherworking as well as the drops that you could get in there. This was something that was not addressed for absolutely ages until Blizzard straight up banned multi-boxing, which was something that targeted automation on both the retail version of the game as well as Classic by making the software solutions against the rules, and then eventually they also made hardware solutions against the rules. You can still multi-box if you're tabbing between characters, but anything that multiplies what you're doing will get you banned. We had the rogue bots, pickpocketing and Blackrock depths. From what I can tell, this has been completely eradicated on Season of Mastery now. I don't know why this hasn't been ported over to TBC as well. I'd assume they exist there to some extent still, or maybe there are just more lucrative farms that they can go after. Either way, no other instance with that volume of high-level humanoid mobs comes to mind where they could easily run around and do a pickpocketing loop. On top of that, loot has been adjusted in Zul'Farrak to stop farming in there, bots in there, as well as just people gold farming in there as general, from it being a bit too good for it being instanced. So overall, yeah, it's definitely a number of improvements. I agree it's a shame that it's taken this long. I too would like to have a game with absolutely zero bots, zero automation, but no online competitive game is going to be totally free of this kind of activity. Aimbots, wall hacks, auto interrupters, gear swapping scripts, or buying or selling gold for real life money. It's part and parcel law of human nature to fervently optimize anything as much as they possibly can, and people will continue to care little enough to get the wallet out so they can play the game that little bit less. I expect it to some degree, but a relatively moderate one, where you can see that effort is being put in to stay on top of it and to maintain the integrity at the heart of the game. Though many of the changes made have been passive ones, which in time may be worked around, and Blizzard and gaming companies do this a lot by the way, it is considerably cheaper and it's better than nothing. Also, you can now report players via the /who function. This is a new-ish feature in Classic. Before that, you had to whisper somebody and then report them after. This gives players a better ability to report should somebody not be directly in front of them. In terms of recognizing bots, they're very similar to how they've always been. They often use click to move, so they're going to make very sharp turns, little to no strafing or turning. They're going to be absolutely decked out in bind on equipped gear. They are not playing the game and questing like you are. They're grinding in obscure locations. Try a /who of Verilus or Ashara and see what you can find, for example. Typically, they don't have guilds, but some of them just accept any old invites to make them look that little bit more believable. The majority of the bots I've seen so far on Season of Mastery have been rogues or hunters, mages. At this point in time, at least, don't appear to be quite as popular. I believe the hunters are being set up for Diamond tribute runs or just standard mob farming. As for rogues, I'm not entirely sure really. There are just better classes for mindlessly farming. Because with a thief debuff and BRD, they aren't going to be doing that anymore. Mages aren't going to be able to do Mara or Strat anymore. The mobs gain eventual immunities to roots and slows and then gain additional movement speed, so that is not going to be happening. And I've heard that the change made to being able to loot items from the chest was made based on a design flaw of clearly the intention wasn't that you should be able to give them out to other players because the items in the chest themselves are soulbound. Josh from Countdown did an interview with Brian Birmingham, team lead on Classic, not so long ago. I'll link it below if you fancy a listen in. And there's 2 points I wanted to mention that he went over on it because they do go quite into detail on how botting looks from Blizzard's end. Brian also talks about the fact that players see somebody who is botting, they report them, and then weeks or months later they see that same name crop up again and again. And he says that's because when a player is banned, the name is released and the botters go back onto it and make another character with the same name. So in one of the clips I'm showing here, there is an absolute infestation of bots in Stranglethorn Vale. This was quite early on into Season of Mastery. I reported all of these players and I did receive 4 confirmation mails saying they have been banned. So let's go through all of their names and see if A, they are available for me to take, or B, if I can see them online at the moment. And we'll go through all these in the background now, but the short of it is I went through all of them and none of the names were available and none of them were online either. Also, they mentioned that a 3-day ban for buying gold may be considered too low. I don't know if this has already been extended, but it would be good to have a bit more than a slap on the wrist for doing something like this. Buyers are a problem just as much as sellers. So overall, I'd say there is less botting and it is less impactful because there are just less people playing than Classic and less people raiding on top of that, so less demand for consumables. Consumables are easier to acquire, so the burden of farming gold has been diminished. We have more gold farms available for players from day one. Players also seem more casual by and large, with less hardcore attitudes to progression. As a result, gold sellers are less frequent and there just is not as much in demand. I don't think you're going to see anything too unreasonable until GDKP start appearing and somebody starts dropping 20k on an Onslaught Girdle or a Bone Reaver's Edge. To me, they will always be the end game of real money trading. And yes, everybody interacts with RMT to a degree due to the nature of how gold is traded, but you don't go to buy a stack of Dreamfoil from the auction house and some swiper decides to bid you up to 50 gold for the stack. Prices on the auction house are mediated by people who actually earn their own gold and understand the value and time that went into earning it. Also, it involves every single player on the server, not the handful of bidders for whatever item it may be, dependent on RNG drops. So there we go. Botters, real money trading, gold buying, gold selling, far from gone. But I mean, come on, real money trading on a seasonal server? You have to be kidding me. It's not as bad as it was, but definitely still exists. Let me know if you've seen anything too bad in your experience and how things are going on your server. And as always, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I shall see you on the next one very soon.